Chapter 1. The Best Bad Idea Al Ever Had. At 4:30 on a Thursday afternoon, the shoe store looked exactly like the inside of Al Bundy's soul. The fluorescent lights hummed with bad intentions. The brown carpet had given up years ago. A pile of open boxes leaned against the stockroom door with the same tired slouch Al had worn since lunch. He sat behind the counter with his chin in his hand and stared at the mall walkway like a man watching life happen to other people. He had sold one pair of orthopedic sandals to a woman who had called him young man and asked if the discount rack came in a less depressing color. Since then, nothing. No customers, no commission, no miracle. Just another day in the paradise known as retail footwear, where a former high school football legend was paid to kneel at the feet of strangers and guess whether they were lying about their size. This is what America has become, Al muttered to nobody, a nation of people with no arches and no respect. On the tiny television mounted in the corner, a local commercial rolled for a riverboat casino across the state line. Champagne glasses sparkled. A smiling couple laughed too hard at a roulette wheel. A voice promised elegance, excitement, and the chance to change your life in one spin. Al snorted. Yeah, and I used to run a 4.340. The bell over the store door gave a neat, polite chime. Not a stumble, not a jangle, a chime. Al looked up and saw a man step inside who did not belong in his store, his mall, his neighborhood, or maybe his planet. He was tall, straight-backed, and neat in a way that made the entire room seem greasy. His face was pale and calm. His eyes moved over the shelves with quick, exact focus, like he was scanning for weaknesses in a military installation. He wore simple clothes, but on him they looked like part of an official procedure. The man approached the counter. "Good afternoon," he said. Al blinked. Nobody had ever sounded that organized in his store. Who died? "I am attempting to acquire footwear appropriate for prolonged terrestrial walking." Al stared at him. "You and me both, pal." "My name is Data." "Of course it is." Al looked around for a hidden camera. "What, was spreadsheet taken?" The man did not react. "I require a durable shoe with moderate arch support and low heel instability. Based on visual inspection, I believe the brown leather model on the third shelf would be suitable." Al leaned back. "You know, most customers wait until I insult them before they pick the shoe themselves." Data turned and looked at the shelf. "The shoe in question is size 10.5. My foot measurement is approximately equivalent." Al narrowed his eyes. "You measured your foot by looking at it?" "Yes." That alone would have made the man weird enough for Al's afternoon. But then the television behind him crackled with the casino commercial again. A close shot showed the roulette wheel spinning in slow glamour. The white ball rattled around the rim. Without turning, Data said, "It will land on 17. Al looked at the television in time to see the ball drop and settle on 17. He looked back at the pale man. "Did you see that before I did?" "Yes." Al squinted. Maybe he had heard it before the number came up on screen. Maybe the commercial repeated the same shot. Maybe the universe had finally decided to soften him up before the next kick. Lucky guess. It was not a guess. Now Al turned all the way around. Another spin played in the commercial montage. Data watched for less than a second. 22, he said. The ball clicked, slowed, and fell into 22. Al rose from his stool so fast his back popped. "Hold it, don't move." Data did not move. He simply stood there, calm and patient, as if men in shoe stores regularly barked orders at him like panicked lab assistants. Al grabbed the remote and jabbed at the button until the commercial looped on a station break. Another roulette shot appeared. "All right," Al said. "Again." Data watched. 0. The ball landed in 0. For one clean second, all the bad noise in Al's head went quiet. He stared at the screen. He stared at Data. Then he stared at the stack of unpaid bills in the drawer under the register, hidden beneath a catalog of discount loafers as if debt could be tricked by paper. He had spent years chasing miracles. Miracle diets, miracle mops, miracle football cards, miracle lawsuits against vending machines. Every one of them had turned out to be a scam, a misunderstanding, or a conversation with Peg. But this was different. This was not hope. This was map-wearing pants. "How?" Al asked. "By estimating the wheel velocity, ball speed, angle of descent, and probable deflection pattern." Al held up a hand. "No, stop. Whatever you just said, nobody needs that much of it. Can you do it every time?" Data considered the question with annoying seriousness. No human-built physical system involving friction, bounce, and obstacle deflection allows perfect certainty. However, with sufficient observation, I can predict the most likely result within a narrow range at high accuracy. Al heard exactly 2 words of that sentence, high accuracy. High how? Under favorable conditions, well above chance. Al sat down slowly. It felt like someone had opened a secret panel in the universe, and behind it was a fat stack of easy money with his name written on it in cheap gold letters. He pointed toward the television. You're telling me that if you look at a roulette wheel, you know where the little ball's gonna land? I can provide a probabilistic forecast. You can tell me where the ball's gonna land. That is a less precise wording, but essentially yes. Al looked toward the empty entrance of the store. Griff was out flirting with a mannequin in women's accessories. The manager was nowhere. Customers remained wisely absent. For the first time all day, Al felt awake. Data, he said carefully, like a man approaching a wild animal made of cash. What are you doing tonight? I have no current commitments. Good, because America needs you. Data tilted his head. In what capacity? Research. He came around the counter and lowered his voice. The instinct hit him before the thought did. This had to stay quiet. If Peg heard the word money, she would spend it before sunset. If Bud heard the word system, he would explain it to death. If Kelly heard the word casino, she would show up dressed like a chandelier and get them arrested in under 7 minutes. No, this was his. For once, something had landed in Al Bundy's lap before the rest of the hyenas smelled blood. Tonight, Al said, we run a tiny experiment. Strictly scientific. Just me and you. No family, no friends, no parasites. We prove your little number trick works in the field. We keep our mouths shut, and then maybe, the future finally apologizes. I do not believe the future is capable of apology, Data said. Mine should be. Data's expression did not change, but he nodded. If you require observational assistance, I can accompany you. Al smiled. It was not his best smile. His best smile had died around 1974, but it was the smile of a man who had just seen daylight through the wall of his life. He picked up the brown leather shoe, rang it up for no reason he could explain, and shoved the box across the counter. Congratulations, you just bought the ugliest shoes in Illinois. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Tonight, pal, we're going someplace classy. A formal environment? No. Gambling. The poor man's tuxedo. The rest of the shift moved like a dream Al did not trust. Every noise annoyed him more than usual because every minute until closing was a minute between him and proof. He kept glancing at the television, hoping for another roulette clip, but the station moved on to weather, then local news, then a commercial for denture cream which did not seem useful even with science on his side. When Griff came back and started complaining about life, women, and socks, Al barely heard him. You sick? Griff asked. Usually by now you've insulted me 3 times. Al waved him off. I'm thinking. Griff looked alarmed. Should I call somebody? Al ignored him. At closing time, he killed the lights, locked the gate, and led Data through the mall as if smuggling a state secret in sensible shoes. They passed the food court, where Kelly would have stopped to wave at boys and Peg would have stopped to spend money they did not have. Al felt almost tender toward the silence. Outside, in the parking lot, he turned to Data. One thing, he said. You don't mention this to anybody. Mention what specifically? The wheel. The numbers. The fact that you may be the only decent thing to happen to me since my senior year highlight reel. You are requesting confidentiality. Exactly. Very well. Al nodded. Good. A man who took words literally. Finally, somebody in his orbit who could follow instructions. He opened the passenger door of his Dodge, then paused. Say one more number, he said. Data looked at the distant glow of the casino billboard off the highway, where a filmed roulette wheel turned behind the smiling face of a woman who had never clipped coupons in her life. 34, Data said. The ball in the billboard video dropped, and even from across the lot, Al could make out the number, 34. His heart kicked. That was it. No more dreams, no more maybe. Tonight, he would test it. One small proof, one little win, nothing flashy, just enough to know the machine worked. And once he knew that, once he had the proof in his hand, every rotten year of being Al Bundy might finally start paying interest. Chapter 2. Proof of Concept. Al had a system. That should have frightened him, because every time Al Bundy believed he had a system, the evening usually ended with either a bill, a bruise, or a lecture from a person he hated, but this one felt different. This one came with a human calculator in brown shoes sitting in the passenger seat and looking out the window like he was on a school field trip to human disappointment. We're not going big, Al said as he drove. That's how suckers get noticed. Your pulse has increased by 11% since leaving the parking lot, Data said. That's not nerves, that's vision. They were not heading to the Riverboat Casino yet. Al was not insane, not in the first hour. First came a smaller test at a veterans hall on the edge of town where, once a month, a charity casino night set up fold-out tables, weak drinks, and a roulette wheel that looked like it had been assembled from spare church parts. Nobody there was getting rich. They were there to feel glamorous on a budget and lose $20 for the marching band. It was perfect. If the trick worked there, Al could graduate to real money. If it did not, he would lose $20 and one evening, which still ranked above most Fridays. Inside the hall, old patriotic bunting drooped from the walls. A bartender in a paper hat poured watered whiskey. A handwritten sign promised blackjack, craps, roulette, and sandwiches, which Al felt was the full American spectrum. He bought a stack of low-value chips and marched Data to the roulette table with the posture of a man pretending not to be terrified. "Observe," Data said. "Not too loud," Al hissed. "In here, you don't sound smart, you sound illegal." The dealer spun the wheel, the ball rattled around the rim. Data watched once, barely leaning forward. 12, he said quietly. Al dropped chips on 12 like he was trying not to look like a man dropping chips on a miracle. The ball bounced twice, tapped a divider, and settled into 12. The little stack of chips pushed back toward him looked vulgar, beautiful, but vulgar. He licked his lips. Again. The next spin came. 19. Al bet 19. 19 hit. On the third spin, Data said, 27, with adjacent spillover risk. Al did not know what spillover risk meant, so he put a little on 27 and a little on the numbers around it because that sounded scientific. 27 hit anyway, which only improved his opinion of science. By the fifth win, the Veterans Hall had changed shape. The sagging room now looked like possibility. The bad carpet looked temporary. The paper flags looked like decorations for his return to greatness. Al's fingers tingled every time chips clicked into a fresh stack. He was not winning enough to buy a yacht or a senator, but he was winning enough to hear the future clear its throat. "This is unbelievable," he whispered. "No," Data said, "it is occurring." That was the thing about Data. He could tape the romance out of anything and somehow make it better. Al did not need poetry, he needed results. He began to structure the experiment. He kept a cocktail napkin and made marks on it every time Data was right, which was often enough to make the napkin look like a medical emergency. He adjusted bet sizes with the solemnity of a man conducting nuclear research, though his method was mostly based on whichever pile of chips looked lonely. "We do 3 low bets," Al muttered, "then 1 medium, then we lay off a spin. That's discipline. Your pattern appears arbitrary. That's what makes it genius." Within 40 minutes, he had turned his modest buy-in into something that felt suspiciously like momentum. Not fortune, not freedom, but real money, bills, not dreams. Enough to cover what he owed at the electric company and maybe put Marcy next door through the emotional pain of seeing him carry restaurant leftovers home in actual foil. He should have stopped there. There are moments in a man's life when the right thing stands in front of him plain as daylight, wearing a sign, whistling for attention. This was one of those moments. Cash out, walk away, go home, hide the money, sleep with your hand on it if necessary. But then the dealer spun again. Data watched. 8. Al's hand moved before thought did. More chips, slightly larger this time. 8 hit. The thrill that ran through him felt young. Not happy, not healthy, young. It was the thrill of a 19-year-old fullback seeing an opening and believing the whole world had finally lined up wrong. He wanted more. Not because he needed more, because once you have the impossible sitting beside you in a brown jacket, modesty begins to feel insulting. "We're not leaving yet," he murmured. "Earlier you stated this would be a small experiment," Data said. "And now the experiment says, keep going." That is not how experiments function. It is tonight. He let himself imagine it. Not the money, the effects, debt gone, Bill stacked in a neat little grave, Peg temporarily speechless. Bud forced to admit his father had done something smart, Kelly dazzled into obedience by the sight of actual cash. Marcy next door hearing, through clenched teeth, that Al Bundy had cracked the system without a single college degree or decent pair of slacks. For the first time in years, he did not feel cornered by life. He felt ahead of it. That dangerous warmth spread through him with every spin. By the time the event organizer announced last call on the gaming tables, Al had piled up enough chips to fill both hands and enough fantasies to ruin a weaker man completely. He cashed out at the little folding desk near the entrance while trying to look bored. The volunteer in the paper visor counted his winnings twice and frowned. "You had a good night." "What can I say?" Al shrugged. "I understand the wheel." Data stood beside him like a witness the law had not asked for. When the cash hit Al's palm, the room went soft around the edges. It was not a king's ransom, it was not retire and die money, but it was too much to call luck and too little to satisfy him. That made it perfect poison. On the drive home, he kept checking the folded bills in his shirt pocket to make sure reality had not corrected itself. "This is step 1, he said. "You have repeated that phrase 6 times. "Because it's beautiful." "You appear agitated. I'm inspired." He drove past his own exit just to buy more time with the feeling. Then he circled back, parked in front of the house, and sat in the dark for a moment listening to the engine tick. The Bundy house waited there in the night like a threat. Inside were the usual sounds of his life: television too loud, somebody arguing, somebody taking without asking, somebody using the word dad like an accusation. He suddenly understood that he was carrying contraband, not money, hope, real hope. In this family, that had to be hidden faster than cash. "You will permit me to enter?" Data asked. All turned slowly. That had been the weakness in the plan. Data was not a pocket calculator. He was a 6-foot problem with a face and opinions and a voice that made every sentence sound like an affidavit. "Temporarily," Al said. "You stay quiet, you sit where I tell you, and if anybody asks, what are you? An android." "No, in this house, you're a cousin." "That is inaccurate." "In this house, accuracy is optional." Inside, the television in the living room threw blue light over the couch. Peg was sprawled under a blanket with the posture of a woman who considered gravity a personal servant. Kelly sat on the floor painting her toenails while watching a music video with the focus she never gave school. Bud was at the table with a book open in front of him, the surest sign that he was trying to impress someone who was not there. They all looked up when Al entered with Data behind him. Peg's eyes narrowed first. "Why are you smiling?" That hit him so hard he almost checked his face with his hands. "I'm not smiling." "You look guilty," Bud said. "And hopeful," Peg added. "That means money or a head injury." Kelly squinted at Data. "Is he European?" Data answered before Al could stop him. "No." Bud closed the book slowly. "Who is this?" Al put a hand out like a cop directing traffic. "Nobody panic. This is my cousin." Peg sat up. "From where, the future?" Al laughed too hard, too fast, too fake. He heard it himself and hated it. "Look, I had a good night, that's all." Peg's mouth opened a little. "At work?" Now Kelly looked alarmed too. "Did feet change?" "No, not at work. Al could feel the money in his pocket like it was glowing. I just had a side opportunity." Bud was already on his feet. "What kind of opportunity?" "None of your business kind." Peg got up, crossed the room, and put a hand on his chest. Her fingers found the bills through the fabric before he could stop her. Her eyes sharpened instantly. "Al." He stepped back, but too late. The room had smelled it. Money. And once the smell got into a Bundy house, privacy died screaming. Al forced a laugh and waved everyone off. "Relax, it's nothing. A little win, a little tiny, meaningless, private, father-earned win." But even while he said it, he knew the worst part. The money was not enough. It was enough to prove the trick worked. Which meant the real score, the one waiting out there under brighter lights and bigger wheels, had just become impossible to stop thinking about. Chapter 3: The Secret Gets a Couch and a Mouth. By breakfast, The Secret had all the privacy of a marching band in a phone booth. Al had spent the night trying to behave normally, which was the first mistake. Normal Al came home defeated, removed his shoes like they had personally betrayed him, and announced that the world was run by idiots. This new Al had strolled in with a mysterious pale man, hidden cash in a cereal box, and gone to bed without once saying the word Peg like it was a diagnosis. Nobody in the Bundy house slept through that level of suspicious. Peg caught him checking the cereal box at 6 in the morning. Bud caught him checking the locks at 6:05. Kelly caught him humming at 6:10 and nearly called an ambulance. Now the whole family was gathered in the kitchen around a table scarred by years of bad meals and worse plans. Data sat at one end with perfect posture, holding a cup of coffee he had no intention of drinking. The others stared at him like he was either a tax audit or a winning lottery ticket. Peg folded her arms. "Start talking." "I am eating breakfast," Al said. "No, you're not. You're hiding something, and I don't appreciate being the last person in this house to know about money that belongs to me." "Belongs to you?" Al barked. "I earned that money." "Then why is it hiding in my cereal?" Bud pointed a fork at Data. "Forget the money. Who's RoboGuest?" "I am not a guest," Data said. "Al instructed me to remain." Kelly brightened. "He talks like a mall computer. I like him." Al rubbed his face. This was why history never gave him nice things. He could not own a miracle for 12 hours without his entire gene pool putting fingerprints on it. "All right," he said. "Everybody calm down. Nobody screams, nobody grabs, nobody says the word casino." Kelly gasped. "Casino!" Al closed his eyes. "Thank you, Pumpkin." Bud leaned forward so hard his chair creaked. "There it is. I knew it. You found some kind of angle." "There is no angle." Peg gave him a look. Al, the only time a man says there is no angle is when his angle has already started sweating. Data placed his cup down carefully. Al observed that I could estimate roulette outcomes with high accuracy. Silence hit the room. Then everybody spoke at once. He can do what? Roulette? How much money? Can he do hair color? Al pointed wildly. See? This is why I said keep your mouth shut. Peg ignored him completely. Her eyes were locked on Data. You can tell where the ball lands? Within probabilistic limits. He means yes, Al said bitterly. Bud stood up and began pacing. No, forget that. Let's get specific. Is this visual tracking, predictive modeling, pattern retention? Because if so, the optimal move isn't random isolated betting. It's data capture, bankroll scaling, distribution across tables. Al threw up his hands. There it is. He's been talking for 3 seconds and already the boy has made me miss my own bad judgment. Kelly turned to Peg. If we go to a casino, I need a dress that says rich but available. You don't have one that says rich, Peg said. You barely have one that says dress. I can buy one with the winnings. Peg snapped her fingers. Exactly. Thank you, Kelly. See, the girl thinks strategically. I thought strategically first, Bud said. This has to be organized. Dad cannot run this himself. That struck Al in the chest because it was both insulting and true. He slammed his palm on the table. Nobody is running anything except me. I found him. I tested him. I won with him. This is my system. Our system, Peg said. Family system, Kelly added. Collective operation, Bud corrected. Data looked from face to face. You appear to be redistributing ownership of an idea Al considers personal. Welcome to the house, Peg said. Al could feel control leaving the room like heat through bad insulation. He turned on Data in panic. Stop helping. You instructed me to answer questions truthfully, not theirs. That was not specified. Bud pounced. Can you only do roulette, or are all wheel-based games vulnerable? What does vulnerable mean in this context? Data asked. Can we beat them? Under favorable circumstances, some outcomes may be predicted more effectively than chance would suggest. Bud made an ecstatic little sound and looked around like a professor who had just discovered gambling. Peg planted both hands on the table. Then we're going. No, Al said. Yes. No. Al, I have spent half my life waiting for a shortcut to happen to someone in this family, and now one finally crawls through the door wearing loafers. We are not wasting it because you want to feel important alone. I don't want to feel important. I want to get rich before the rest of you get stupid. Too late, Bud said. Kelly raised a hand. Question. If he knows the number, can I tell people I'm with a count? A what? Al asked. A count, or a prince, something with a free buffet. Peg nodded. Good. Use what God gave you. What? Confusion? Bud said. Data sat calmly while the room boiled. If chaos had a natural predator, it apparently looked like a patient man in an inexpensive jacket. Al grabbed a pencil and jabbed it toward him. Answer one thing. If I take you to a real casino, big wheel, real money, can we win? Data answered with that same infuriating clean tone. If you follow a disciplined procedure, minimize attention, and accept a finite gain rather than endless escalation, your chance of leaving with profit is substantial. There it was. Not just yes, a yes with rules. And if there was anything Al Bundy loved, it was hearing that success was available just on the other side of ignoring rules. Substantial, Peg repeated softly, already spending it in her head. Bud pointed at Al. See? Procedure. He said procedure. That means I should design the signaling system. No, Al said. You need me. You're an emotional bettor. I'm a masculine bettor. You spelled reckless wrong. Kelly leaned toward Data. Do you have to wear that, or can we put you in something that says international mystery? I wear functional clothing. That is so sad. The argument swelled from there into pure Bundy architecture, which meant it had no foundation and too many entrances. Peg wanted a suite. Bud wanted notebooks, coded phrases, and probability charts. Kelly wanted a silver dress, a feather boa, and one of those tiny drinks that costs more than rent. Al wanted silence, obedience, and sole ownership of the miracle, which was the most unrealistic wish in the room. At one point, he tried to restore order by drawing a diagram on the back of a grocery flyer. Look, he said, simple. We go in quiet, I stand at the table. Data watches, he tells me the number, I place the bet, we leave. Bud leaned over. That's not a diagram. That's a rectangle with the word money in it. It's conceptual. It's illiterate. Peg tapped the paper. Where am I? Hotel gift shop, Al said. Wrong. Kelly tapped the paper too. Where am I? Far away from me. Also wrong. Data studied the crude drawing for a second longer than it deserved. Your plan contains significant ambiguity. Al pointed at him, then translated into genius. Please define act natural, Data said. Al frowned. What? You used that instruction twice. Human behavior in casinos varies considerably. Natural for whom? Bud smirked. See, this is what I've been saying. Dad communicates like a hostage note. Peg said, natural means don't look like you're cheating. That is clearer, Data said. Kelly leaned in. Can you look lucky? Data paused. Luck is not a visual category. Bud sat down, delighted. I love him. Al hated that Bud loved him. It made the whole arrangement feel contaminated. He stood, paced once, then stopped by the sink and stared out the filthy window like a general deciding whether to invade. He could still walk away. He had his proof. He had a small win. He could hide the money, send Data on his way, and spend the next 20 years wondering if he had once touched greatness and let it go because his family was too loud. That thought lasted maybe 3 seconds. Because on the other side of it was a bigger wheel, brighter lights, and the possibility of enough cash to make his life look accidental instead of deserved. He turned back. Fine, he said. Peg smiled instantly. Bud reached for paper. Kelly clapped. Al held up both hands. But this is my operation. Mine. We do it my way. That has never once improved anything, Peg said. It's symbolic. He jabbed a finger around the table. Nobody freelances, nobody brags, nobody attracts attention. We go in, we take the casino's money, and we get out before greed, stupidity, and family loyalty kill us. Peg nodded. So just before you start improvising. Ha, very funny. Data said, I recommend a clear exit threshold. Bud looked up. Yes, bankroll discipline. Al hated hearing his own miracle agree with Bud, but the logic sounded good enough to steal. Right, threshold. We hit a number, we leave. What number? Peg asked. Al opened his mouth, then realized every number he liked immediately turned into a life. A better couch, paid bills, a new television, shoes that were not sold one humiliating foot at a time, steak, revenge, respect. He named a figure large enough to make the room go reverent. Peg inhaled. Bud nodded with academic greed. Kelly said, Can I get a fur? No, everyone else said. Al squared his shoulders. He could already feel the plan slipping from his grip, but the bigger score was out there now, shining like bait. Against his better judgment, and because his better judgment had never once offered him cash, he gave the order that doomed him. We go tonight, he said. The room erupted. And in the middle of it, calm as a machine waiting to be misused, Data asked the only sensible question. What is a fur? Chapter 4. The Bundys Go Professional. Every disastrous operation begins with somebody saying, let's keep this simple. By late afternoon, the Bundy living room looked like a command center designed by people who had never successfully commanded anything. Bud had spread notepads, graph paper, and 2 library books across the coffee table as if he were preparing for a military campaign against fractions. Peg had clipped travel ads and circled words like suite and buffet. Kelly had turned the couch into a mountain of rejected outfits. Al paced between them with a pencil behind his ear and the self-importance of a man who had mistaken borrowed brilliance for his own. Data sat in the middle of it all, hands folded, waiting for instructions that made sense. He would be waiting a long time. Rule 1, Al said. Nobody uses real names. Bud looked up. Why? Because professionals don't. This isn't a spy movie. It's a casino. Exactly. A classy crime zone. Peg didn't look up from the brochure in her hands. Fine. My fake name is Velvet. Al stopped pacing. Absolutely not. Why not? Because you're not a lamp. Kelly raised her hand. Can mine be Tiffany Starlight? Can yours be quiet? Al shot back. Bud scribbled anyway. No aliases. Bad operational value. If someone forgets and answers to the wrong name, that creates a spike in suspicious behavior. Al hated when Bud used words that sounded right. Fine, no fake names. But everybody still has a job, he pointed. Peg, you stay relaxed. I can do that. Not shopping relaxed. Invisible relaxed. Then no. Bud, you keep track of how much we win. I was going to say that anyway. Kelly, you, Al searched for something useful, a daughter like Kelly could do in a criminal enterprise without accidentally setting it on fire. You distract people. Kelly brightened. Now you're talking. Peg shook her head. That girl could distract a funeral. Al turned to Data. And you stay with me, close, quiet. When the wheel spins, you tell me the number. At what volume? Data asked. Low. Please define low. Al pinched the bridge of his nose, like if a man was confessing to a priest he didn't trust. Data considered it, understood. Bud slid a notepad across the table. On it, he had drawn a ridiculous chart of arrows, circles, and table positions. Actually, direct vocalization is inefficient. Better to use coded signals. Touch left sleeve for red, right sleeve for black. Number families by finger taps. Peg frowned. That sounds like work. It sounds like concealment, Bud said. It sounds like my son finally found a way to make free money boring, Al replied. The plan got worse from there. Bud insisted on an exit threshold with numbered contingencies. Peg insisted on a spending threshold with emotional contingencies. Kelly insisted on wardrobe changes for each phase of the evening because, in her words, you can't enter rich looking exactly like you arrived poor. Al insisted on superstition, which he called instinct because it sounded more masculine. He banned the words lose, security, and enough. He refused to sit at a wheel facing north because his football coach had once faced north on a losing bus ride. He made everybody touch the doorframe before leaving because luck likes respect. Data observed all of this with perfect calm. Your preparation appears to blend contradictory concepts, he said. That's called balance, Al replied. No, Bud said. That's called Dad. At 6 o'clock, Al held final rehearsal in the kitchen. Scenario 1, he said. Pit boss walks up. What do we do? Peg answered first. I cry and say we're celebrating our anniversary. How old's the anniversary? Bud asked. Depends how rich we look. No, Al said. Too sentimental. Kelly said, I flirt. Too effective, Peg muttered. Bud said, we remain calm, reduce bet size, rotate table positions, and cash out incrementally. Al hated all of them equally. Wrong. We act natural. Data lifted a hand. Yes, Al said. Again, natural for whom? Nobody had an answer, which should have been a warning. Instead, Al pushed forward. Scenario 2, somebody asks what you do. I say I'm with him, Peg said, pointing at Al, and let them draw their own sad conclusions. I say I'm in retail, Al said. Bud blinked. Why would you tell the truth at the one moment lying helps? Because nobody believes a man dressed like this is winning at anything else. Kelly stepped out from behind the couch wearing something silver and alarming. What if somebody asks what I do? Peg looked her over. Honey, the answer is already in the dress. Kelly grinned. Good. The sun dropped. The hour came. They piled into the Dodge in a mood that was not confidence so much as greed rehearsed until it sounded reasonable. Peg carried an oversized purse for imaginary winnings she had already spent twice. Bud carried a notebook like he was about to challenge the casino to a debate. Kelly carried enough perfume to constitute a weather event. Data carried nothing at all, because he alone understood that reality was not improved by props. During the drive, Al repeated rules nobody intended to follow. No celebrating, no talking over me, no side deals, no buffet until I say buffet. You don't own food, Peg said. Tonight I might. Probability does not reward confidence, Data said from the back seat. Al checked the mirror. Good, because what I got is destiny. That is worse, Bud muttered. When the casino finally rose out of the night in a wash of gold light and fake glass, everybody in the car went quiet. It was not a palace. It was what poor people imagined palaces looked like. Red carpet, brass rails, chandeliers that tried too hard, but compared to the Bundy house, it looked like Rome. Kelly made a tiny sound of awe. Peg sat forward. I want a robe. Bud stared at the entrance with hostile admiration. Statistically speaking, this place is a machine for separating idiots from money. Al smiled thinly. Then tonight it finally meets professionals. He parked crooked, straightened his jacket, and turned around in his seat. Final check. Everybody knows the roles. Peg nodded. I keep my dignity flexible. Bud nodded. I document the operation. Kelly nodded. I sparkle with purpose. Data nodded. I observe the wheel and provide predictive guidance. Al took a breath. There it was. The whole rotten plan, held together by greed, lies, and a machine man in practical shoes. It was fragile. It was stupid. It was probably immoral. But it was his. He opened the car door. Let's go get what fate owes me. The lobby door slid apart with a hush that sounded expensive. Warm air hit them first, carrying perfume, smoke, liquor, and the dry metallic smell of money moving from one hand to another. The carpet was thick enough to forgive sins. Somewhere deeper inside, bells chimed, chips clicked, and a woman laughed the hard, bright laugh of somebody losing while pretending to win. The family stepped in and immediately threatened the plan. Kelly saw a mirrored wall and stopped to inspect herself. Peg saw a boutique and changed direction by instinct. Bud saw 3 roulette tables on the gaming floor and started ranking them under his breath. All wheeled around. Formation. You did not establish a formation, Data said. Just stay near me. The chandeliers overhead spilled polished light across the floor. In it, the Bundys looked exactly like what they were, people trying to enter luxury through the side door of mathematics. And still, walking beneath that glow with Data beside him and the promise of a cracked wheel ahead, Al felt taller than he had in years, too tall. That was the danger. The first win had made him hopeful. The planning had made him proud. Now the building itself, with its fake glamour and velvet ropes, was making him feel chosen. He should have feared that. Instead, he adjusted his collar, glanced toward the roulette section, and led his family forward, carrying a plan too delicate to survive the first contact with reality. Chapter 5. The Hot Table. The first 3 spins were clean enough to feel holy. Al chose a roulette table tucked just far enough from the loudest traffic to look ordinary. Not empty, not crowded, a middle-aged couple losing politely, a salesman with a shiny forehead betting birthdays, a woman in a red dress smoking like she mistrusted oxygen. Perfect. Nobody glamorous, nobody memorable. Nobody who ought to be near a miracle. Data stood at Al's shoulder with the blank patience of a bodyguard hired by a calculator. The wheel turned. The ball climbed the rim. Data spoke without moving his lips much at all. 16, red. Al placed the chips with what he hoped looked like routine bad judgment. The ball danced, rattled, kissed a divider, and dropped into 16 red. The dealer pushed winnings toward him. Al did not smile. Not yet. He simply nodded, as if this happened to him all the time and he was already tired of being right. Second spin. 21, black, hit, third spin, 9, red, hit again. The air changed around him. It always did once a man started winning. Losers leaned slightly closer without admitting they were looking. Dealers got smoother. Lights seemed hotter. Sound sharpened. Al could feel the edge of attention brushing his sleeves. Steady, Bud whispered from nearby, scribbling in his notebook like a junior accountant of sin. Don't whisper at me, Al muttered. Whispering is suspicious. Peg drifted past once, moving with impressive laziness toward the cocktail service while already wearing the expression of a woman deciding between 2 expensive soaps she had not yet been paid to deserve. Kelly had positioned herself within sight of the pit area and was laughing at something a man in a blazer said, whether it was funny or not. They were supposed to stay controlled. Instead, they were beginning to behave like people who had been told the laws of life no longer applied to them. Which, for a brief and terrible stretch, was almost true. Data called the next number. All raised the bet. Hit. Again hit. Soon, the chips in front of him were no longer a pile but an argument. Enough for overdue bills. Enough for breathing room. Enough to make him imagine walking past Marcy's house with a shopping bag from somewhere she respected. Sweat gathered at the base of his neck. Your skin conductivity has increased, Data said. That means I'm winning, Al murmured. It means you are under stress. Same thing. The wheel spun again. Data gave him 18 black. It hit. The salesman with the shiny forehead laughed in disbelief and moved a chip onto 18 for the next spin, because mankind had never learned a single lesson about patterns. Al hated him immediately. Do not attract imitators, Data said quietly. I'm not attracting them. I'm inspiring them. The dealer cleared the table. Fresh chips stacked, fresh spin. For a while, the system was beautiful. Al bet, won, leaned back, cooled off, repeated. Bud, to his credit, kept the number straight. Peg stayed within visual range and only bought 1 scarf, which counted as discipline in her case. Kelly smiled at strangers with such reckless brightness that it functioned like a flare, but she had not yet detonated anything. Even better, Data remained precise, dry, deadly. Every time the ball dropped where he said it would, the knot in Al's life loosened another inch. He started thinking in complete fantasies. Not just bills. A television so large neighbors could resent it through the window. Steak twice in 1 week. The electric company speaking to him respectfully, shoes bought by choice, maybe a recliner that did not remember previous failures in the shape of the cushions. He even caught himself imagining the most intoxicating image of all, not being behind. That was when things got dangerous. A server walked by with a tray of drinks. Peg intercepted her and pointed toward the table like a queen recognizing tax revenue. Kelly abandoned one conversation for another and laughed loud enough for the pit to glance over. Bud pushed his glasses up and whispered, "Our return curve is incredible. If we maintain the current velocity, we can hit threshold within 20 minutes. Al sat up straighter. Threshold. The number they'd named back in the house. He looked at the stacks in front of him and realized Bud might be right. They were close. Closer than he had expected. Close enough to leave. Close enough to turn the whole insane night into a success story told in low voices for years. He should have felt relief. Instead, he felt insulted. Leave now? With proof, yes. With money, yes. But without glory, without the full weight of the universe admitting that Al Bundy had outsmarted the machine, that felt small, practical, almost timid. He had not come here for timid. A man at the next table glanced over his shoulder twice. A floor supervisor in a dark suit made a small note on a card. The red-dressed smoker looked at Al's chips and shifted one of hers to match him. Visibility. It slid in slow and smooth, the way trouble always did when there was money on the felt. Data saw it before Al wanted to. Observation levels are increasing, he said. Recommend preparing to exit soon. Bud heard him. Correct, we are near target. Peg drifted back to the table with a drink in one hand and new lipstick confidence on her face. How near? Bud told her. Her eyes widened. All. Now the word meant something. Not accusation. Opportunity. We could leave now, she said. Cash out, get a room, order food we don't have to microwave. Tomorrow I buy one thing that zips all the way up. Kelly appeared at Peg's side like a perfume cloud. And breakfast in bed. Rich people always have breakfast in bed. That is because poor people do not trust the sheets, Peg replied. Al looked at the pile again. It was enough. Petty, satisfying, real. Exactly what any decent loser should have grabbed and run with. The dealer spun. The ball climbed. Data said 31. Black. Al placed a larger bet without announcing it, and the movement made the supervisor at the rail look over again. The ball dropped. 31 black. The hit came with a little gasp from the woman in the red dress and a curse from the salesman. The dealer pushed an even fatter stack toward Al. Something swelled in his chest, and it was not caution. It was the old thing, the dangerous thing, the part of him that had once believed crowds existed to cheer and that defeat was an administrative error. He rose half out of his seat, then forced himself down. Maybe a little more, he said. Bud stared at him. That is not the plan. Plans change. No, Bud snapped. Bad dads say that right before disaster. Peg leaned in. He's right, Al. We have enough. Enough. There was the word he had banned. He looked at Peg, at Bud, at Kelly, at the chips, at the supervisor pretending not to watch, and then at Data, who stood there with the clean face of a fact nobody liked. You said substantial, Al whispered. I said a disciplined procedure would likely yield profit, Data answered. Profit ain't victory. Those terms are not synonymous. Kelly held up a shopping bag from the boutique. I already started being rich. Bud groaned. You... what? It was on account. I said my father was on a streak. Al should have been furious. Instead, weirdly, it pleased him. The family was already leaning into the future he had cracked open. Why leave with a polite win when the room itself was beginning to admit he belonged above it? That was when the pit boss came closer. Not close enough to act, close enough to exist. Al felt the spotlight in that distance. Data lowered his voice another degree. Immediate departure is advised. The right move stood there again, plain as a road sign. Cash out, walk, survive, the miracle. But Al watched the wheel turn under bright casino lights and saw not danger, but one more chance to make the whole rotten world watch him stop being Al Bundy for good. One more run, he said. Peg shut her eyes. Bud swore under his breath. And the family, who already had enough money for a petty, beautiful escape, stayed in place because the one man who should have left could not bear to walk away while he was still hearing victory in the click of the wheel. Chapter 6, Leave with the Money, Not Al. The smartest thing Al Bundy did all night was hear Peg say, Let's go. The dumbest thing he did was answer, Not yet. After that, every decision came dressed as confidence and smelled like gasoline. They had the money. That was the cruel joke. Stacks of chips. A real, breathing win. The kind of modest score a sane man could take home, hide in the coffee can, and turn into months of gloating. But sanity had left Al somewhere around his 6th correct number. Now he wanted something worse than relief. He wanted triumph. Peg took his arm. Al, listen to me. I have my first honest-to-God expensive hand cream in that bag, and I would like to keep it. We leave now. One more push. That is what every idiot in this room said 10 minutes before the divorce. Bud stepped in too, almost offended by the emotional inefficiency of his father. From a game theory standpoint, the correct move is obvious. If I wanted a theory, I'd ask a guy who had kissed a girl in the last fiscal year. Insulting me does not improve your expected value. No, but it improves my mood. Data waited until the noise dipped. The probability of drawing intervention increases with time, consistency, and escalating bet size. Al turned to him with a grin that wanted approval and found none. Then we'll vary it. That would reduce the pattern, but not eliminate the risk. Fine, good, we reduce without reducing. Al pointed at Bud. See, that's why I'm leader. I can think on my feet. That's exactly the problem, Bud said. Al changed the plan in real time because changing the plan made him feel like a genius instead of a passenger. They would split tables. No, they would rotate tables. No, they would stay put but vary denomination. No, Peg would cash out small amounts while he kept playing. No, Bud would shadow the supervisor. No, Kelly would keep the pit distracted by existing near it. None of these ideas lasted more than 30 seconds before a better, worse idea pushed in front of it. Through all of it, Data remained maddeningly consistent. Your instructions are conflicting, he said. Welcome to family leadership, Peg replied. The final version of the revised plan was this. Al would move to a livelier table farther in, one with richer players and a bigger wheel of consequences. There he would place a few intentionally imperfect bets, win irregularly enough to look human, then at the perfect emotional moment, land one glorious final hit large enough to feel like destiny had signed a receipt. Bud called it irrational theater. Al called it style. They moved deeper into the casino beneath chandeliers so polished they seemed to judge people. The new table sat in a brighter pool of light. The players wore better jackets and worse expressions. One heavy-set man with a diamond watch had the irritated confidence of someone who believed money was a personality trait. A young couple stood behind him trying to look lucky together. This was not the quiet corner that had carried Al so far. This was the main stage, and he loved it instantly. This is a terrible idea, Peg said. No, Al replied. This is where winners stand. Winners stand by the cashier. Bud opened his notebook again. We are now departing from every successful condition that made the previous run work. That notebook is departing from my patience. Data's gaze tracked the wheel, the dealer's hand, the bounce points. I can still attempt predictions. That's all I need, Al said. It was not all he needed. What he needed was an audience. The first spin at the new table came. Data gave him 14 red. Al split chips across red, 14, and a neighbor number because he wanted to look plausible. 14 hit anyway. The diamond watch man glanced sideways. Al felt taller. Second spin, Data called 30. Al won again, though not clean enough to look supernatural. Good. Let the room think he was merely touched by fate and not escorted by it. Peg tugged at his sleeve. Enough spectacle. We have the room money. We have the hand cream money. We might even have cabana money. There are cabanas? Kelly asked. There are if your father grows a survival instinct. Bud pushed his glasses up. Actually, one more controlled sequence could optimize the total without significantly increasing the chance of detection, but only if we follow exact constraints. Al turned, delighted. See? Even the boy says one more. Controlled sequence, Bud said. You don't own the word one. That tiny scrap of support was all Al needed to promote his bad idea into philosophy. He stood straighter, loosened his shoulders, and started talking too much. He told the diamond watch man, you gotta feel the wheel. The man looked at him like he had found a coupon talking. Al enjoyed that. He began to narrate his own betting. Not loudly, not yet, but enough to hear himself sound like a man with secret knowledge wearing an off-the-rack jacket. Every correct hit polished his ego further. Soon he was not following Data so much as partnering with destiny. Soon the money in front of him did not look like winnings. It looked like confirmation. 24, Data said quietly before the next spin settled. Al pushed a bigger stack than before. Peg saw it. Al. Bud saw it. That violates the threshold logic. Kelly saw it and whispered, ooh. The ball dropped into 24. The table reacted. Not with chaos. Worse, with attention. The diamond watchman stepped back half an inch and looked properly interested. The couple behind him stopped pretending to talk to each other. The dealer's smile flattened into professionalism. Two suits at the edge of the pit exchanged the sort of glance that meant people with radios might soon develop an opinion. Data did not need to say anything. The whole room was now speaking his point for him. Peg hissed, "Cashier, now." Bud snapped his notebook shut. "We are on borrowed time." Kelly leaned in too close. "That rich guy thinks you're mysterious." Al stared at the growing stacks. Mysterious, rich, watched, right. It was everything he had ever wanted, arriving in the exact order most likely to destroy him. The diamond watch man smirked. "You seem pretty sure of yourself, shoe salesman." Al froze. "How'd you know I was a shoe salesman?" The man shrugged. "You have the posture." Bud muttered, "This is how Dad dies, defending his dignity to a wristwatch." The correct move now was to take the insult, pocket the cash, and leave the building with lungs full of victory. Instead, Al laughed, loudly. "Friend," he said, "you don't know what you're looking at." Peg's eyes widened in horror. Bud actually whispered, "No." Data watched him with what might have been concern if concern had ever learned to hold perfectly still. The room seemed to lean in. Al could feel it. This was no longer about bills, not even about Marcy. This was about a man who had been treated like wallpaper for years, finally standing under formal lighting with chips in front of him and witnesses nearby. He wanted a finish. Not a responsible finish, a legendary one. He scooped a larger tower of chips into his hand, ignored Peg grabbing for his wrist, and pointed toward the biggest wheel in the section. "One last bet," he said. "A real one." Bud looked ready to faint. "That is not a sentence," Peg said, furious now. "That is a confession." "Al," Data said, "your chosen amount will increase both variance and visibility." "Exactly," Al said. "That's how people remember you." He marched to the brighter table under the deepest chandelier, the one practically designed for public mistakes, while his family trailed behind him in the shape of a bad omen. And, with every step into that light, the casino's patience got thinner. Chapter 7. Public Failure in Formal Lighting. The high-limit roulette table looked exactly like the kind of place Al Bundy had spent his life believing he deserved and would ruin on contact. The felt was cleaner. The rails gleamed. The dealer moved with a quiet elegance that made Al want to win on principle. Above the table, the chandelier threw hard white light that erased mercy from every face beneath it. This was where people failed expensively. Perfect. Peg grabbed his sleeve one last time. "If you sit down, I am leaving you here." "No, you're not." "Correct," Bud said. "We're all too close to the money." Kelly adjusted her hair in the mirrored pillar beside the table. "This is a great angle for me." Al ignored them all and dropped into the chair like a man arriving at his own coronation. The dealer gave him the sort of polished, neutral smile reserved for customers who might be lucky, insane, or both. "Buying in?" Al spread chips onto the felt with more force than grace. "I'm already in." Data took position behind him. Two security men had not yet approached, but they were now visible in the room as possibilities. The pit boss from earlier stood near a column, speaking quietly to another supervisor while pretending to admire the architecture. Bud noticed them. Peg noticed them. Data obviously noticed them. The only person who did not seem to care was the one creating the problem. The wheel spun, the ball climbed. Data's voice came low and precise. 5, red. Al pushed a thick stack to 5 in red. The amount made Peg inhale through her teeth. The diamond watch man had wandered over to watch. Kelly, sensing drama but not danger, planted herself 2 steps too close. The ball dropped, 5 red. The payout came in a rush of chips that looked almost indecent under the chandelier. A few people at nearby tables glanced over. One man actually stopped mid-drink. The room did not erupt. It focused. That was enough. Al felt his spine straighten with stupid royalty. "You see that?" he said to nobody and everybody. "You gotta know when the wheel talks to you." Peg leaned close and smiled the way women smile right before murder. Wonderful. It said, "Leave." Bud held his notebook like a prayer book. "Cash out now. We are beyond favorable conditions." Data added, "Continuation is not recommended." Kelly looked at the chips and whispered, "Dad, we look amazing." And there it was. The worst fuel in the world. Approval. Not from life, not from fate, from the room, from the family, from the sight of money turning Al Bundy, for one bright idiotic minute, into a man other people had to watch. The dealer reset the wheel. Data's eyes tracked it. 19, black. All reached for chips. At the same exact moment, Kelly, trying to be helpful in the way tornadoes are helpful to roofing companies, clapped her hands and said too brightly, 19, oh my god, it's always the one he says. Time did not stop. It became cruelly clear. Bud's head snapped toward her. Peg closed her eyes in exhausted fury. The The dealer's expression went professionally blank. The nearby supervisor stopped pretending not to notice. Al hissed, "Kelly." "What? I was supporting." Bud stepped in front of her. No more words, ever again. The pit boss approached now with the soft steps of a man arriving to end a magic trick. "Sir," he said pleasantly to Al, "how are we doing tonight?" Al smiled too fast, winning. "We noticed." Peg muttered, "Of course they noticed. We brought a parade." The pit boss glanced at Data, then at Bud's notebook, then at the family cluster, which now looked less like gamblers and more like a group project in poor impulse control. "Would you mind stepping away from the table after this spin?" he asked. "Why?" Al snapped. "Because a working man finally gets hot?" "Because we'd like a word." Bud whispered, "Take the word. Take all the words. Just take the chips with them." But Al heard accusation, and accusation had always been his worst drug. "This is harassment," he said loudly. "A man can't have a lucky night." Data, still watching the wheel, said, "The probable outcome remains 19 black." Peg turned on him. "Now is not the time to be useful." The ball was still in motion. So was the whole stupid family. Bud tried to gather the chips. Peg slapped his hand away because she did not trust him with physical money. Kelly asked the pit boss if this counted as a VIP situation. The Diamond Watchman smirked openly. Al, furious and grandiose and deaf to survival, shoved the full bet onto 19 black anyway. "Spin it," he barked. The dealer looked to the pit boss. The pit boss looked to security. Security moved. And in that instant of official interruption, chaos finished what greed had started. Bud bumped Al's elbow. Peg reached for the stack. Kelly stumbled back in heels that had no business near mathematics. Chips scattered. Some slid across the felt. Some dropped to the carpet. One security man grabbed the rail. The dealer pulled back. The spin was called dead before the ball settled, the bet unresolved under a storm of human stupidity. "No!" Al shouted. "That's my number." Data glanced at the wheel. It landed on 19 black. That should have helped. It hurt. Because there it was. Proof, right in front of everybody. Data had been right again. Perfect information, perfect number, perfect moment. And it was worthless. Worthless because Peg was yelling at Al. "You maniac, we had enough." Worthless because Bud was yelling at Kelly. Why would you announce the source of the pattern out loud? I thought we were being glamorous. Worthless because Al was now standing chest out in front of 2 security guards insisting reality had victimized him. "The system works," he shouted. "The problem is execution." "You are correct," Data said. That was technically true and emotionally devastating. The pit boss's smile was gone now. "Sir, you're done for the evening." "Done? We were robbed." "You were conspicuous." Peg pointed at Al like he was evidence. "Write that on his grave." Security closed in gently but firmly, the way one handles drunks, gamblers, and relatives at weddings. The Diamond Watch man turned away, already bored. Nearby players pretended not to stare while absolutely staring. Kelly tried to preserve dignity by adjusting her dress. Bud tucked his notebook under his arm as if a written record might somehow restore self-respect. Peg snatched her boutique bag like the last survivor of a better timeline. Al kept talking all the way to the exit. "This is persecution. This is class warfare. This is what happens when a regular guy beats the machine. We had a method." "You had a family," Peg said. "Same thing." "No," Bud said. "A method repeats, a family ruins." The glass doors opened. The casino breathed them out into the night with nothing in their hands but the smaller cash out. Peg had managed earlier, scattered pride, and the loud certainty that if Al had left 10 minutes sooner, he would have been a hero in his own house. Instead, he was Al Bundy again, just under fancier lighting. Chapter 8. The Long Walk Back to the Same Life. The parking lot had the honest kind of cold. Not casino cold, piped through vents and perfumed with fake glamour. Real night air. It hit the face, cleared the lungs, and reminded people who they were. Under its influence, the Bundys looked less like high rollers and more like what they had always been, a family held together by habit, volume, and the occasional shared enemy. Tonight, the enemy was standing in the middle of them, wearing his own jacket. "You ruined it," Peg said. That was the opening gun. All threw up both hands. "Me? I ruined it? I am the only reason any of this happened." "Exactly," Bud said. "That was the flaw in the design." Kelly hugged her little shopping bag to her chest. "I still think we had a moment." "We had a crime scene," Peg snapped. They were standing under a parking lot lamp that made everybody look guilty. In the near distance, the casino glowed on, bright and indifferent, already taking money from other fools who had not yet learned the basic rule of fortune. If it ever sat down next to Al Bundy, it was only resting. Data stood slightly apart from the argument, calm as ever, as if noisy failure were merely one more weather pattern humans produced for no reason. Bud turned to him first because Bud could not resist a witness. Tell him we should have left at the original threshold. Data answered immediately. That would have yielded the highest secure profit. Peg pointed at Al. There, science says you're an idiot. Science also says I was right, Al shot back. He jabbed a finger toward the casino. The number hit, 19 black. I had it. And still left with less than if you'd shut up, Bud said. That is not a correction, Data said. It is an explanation. Kelly looked at him with honest curiosity. So your magic worked? It is not magic. Honey, if a machine man says a number and my husband almost becomes rich, that's magic enough for this street, Peg said. Al paced 3 steps, turned, and paced back. The lost shape of the night still throbbed inside him. That was the part that hurt most. Not the money, not even the humiliation. The shape. He could still see the version where he stood up from the low table, cashed out, rented the suite, ordered steak, and spent one clean evening being respected in his own cheap life. He came within inches of saying it. Maybe we should have left. Maybe. The words hovered there, heavy and unfamiliar, like furniture that did not belong in the house. Peg saw it happen. So did Bud. For one dangerous second, the whole family watched Al Bundy approach self-awareness like a raccoon approaching a trap. Then, instinct saved him from growth. Besides, he said, straightening, the real mistake was roulette. Peg stared. What? Data blinked once. Bud looked genuinely offended. You cannot be serious. Think about it, Al said, warming to the fresh stupidity. Roulette's too public, too many eyes, too much sparkle. What we need is something quieter, something with less supervision. Peg put a hand over her face. No. Horse tracks, Al said. No. Or dog races, or maybe televised stock reports. If he can read a wheel, maybe he can read one of those market lines. Bud laughed the bitter laugh of a son cursed by genetics. Yes, great, go commit fraud in a wider variety of industries. Kelly brightened again. Do horse tracks have outfits? Everything has outfits if you're wrong enough, Peg muttered. All turned to Data with renewed purpose, the way only a man who had learned nothing could. Can you do horses? Not by looking at them. Stocks? Prediction in financial markets would require different data. Good. We'll get data. That's your whole thing. Peg dropped her hand and stared at the sky as if waiting for a meteor with standards. Al, she said flatly, we had enough money to leave. We had enough money for a room, dinner, and one night where I got to look down on strangers. And you traded it for a speech. It was a good speech. Security disagreed. Bud tucked the notebook into his jacket. For the record, the operation failed because you transformed a concealed edge into a public ego performance. For the record, Al said, my operation failed because everybody around me panicked. Kelly announced the number source, Bud said. Peg grabbed the chips, Al said. You challenged a casino to admire you, Peg said. And you married me anyway. That landed just enough to stop them all for a second. Peg narrowed her eyes. Don't get romantic when we're broke. Kelly looked down at her bag. Are they going to let me keep this lipstick? If they don't, Peg said, taking the bag from her, I will commit a second crime. Data, who had been silent through most of the parking lot trial, finally offered the cleanest summary of the night. My predictions were accurate. Human misuse was the variable. Nobody could argue with that, which only made it more insulting. Al sighed. It was not the sigh of a changed man. It was the sigh of a man rearranging failure into a story that would flatter him later. Fine, he said. Maybe we got a little greedy. Peg and Bud looked at each other in genuine shock. Kelly whispered, Did Dad just evolve? Al held up a finger. But only because we were thinking too small. Peg groaned so deeply it sounded ancestral. Bud laughed again, this time because despair was cheaper than therapy. Data turned his head toward Al. Would you like me to calculate the probability of success for your proposed future schemes? Al thought about it. He thought about 19 black sitting there on a dead spin. He thought about the chips, the chandelier, the room looking at him. He thought about how close he had come to leaving with proof that, for one night at least, life had blinked first. Then he looked at the glowing casino behind them, the broke car waiting ahead, and the family already sliding back into their default bickering arrangement. "No," he said. "I want to enjoy the dream before you kill it." Peg snorted. Bud rolled his eyes. Kelly asked if dream people still stopped for pancakes. And with that, the Bundys turned toward the Dodge, carrying one boutique bag, one small saved cash out, one perfect lost number, and the absolute certainty that by tomorrow Al Bundy would have a brand new bad idea and the same old life to blame it on.